Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Agency Automators. I'm Jordan, the shy one, and we have Noah, the extrovert. What's going on, buddy? This week, we have Kane Jamison from Content Harmony. Kane, what's going on, man?
Guys, how are you guys doing?
Doing well, thanks. Doing well. So, for those that don't know you or Content Harmony, mind giving a quick introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. So Content Harmony started as an agency around 2012. And before that, I've been doing WordPress sites and stuff and affiliate stuff since 2005. And so we were doing kind of small business SEO and things. And over the years, really decided content marketing and link acquisition, promotion type of stuff was where we wanted to focus. So Content Harmony has foremost been a content marketing agency. And then a couple of years ago in 2018, we started the process of building out a software platform. And so at this point, Content Harmony is a software company. We still have a few agency clients that we work with, but everything we're doing is focused on SaaS, basically.
Very cool. So I know Noah and myself are huge automation nerds. So what led you down that path of moving towards a SaaS offering?
Yeah, so 2018, we had some agency headaches, lost, 20, 30, 40% of client work over the course of a couple of months in the spring. That was kind of a frustrating personal thing. And so as I started picking up the pieces, started figuring out how I wanted to point the agency going forward, part of what we figured out was I really preferred working on more productized service type of approaches. Like I don't want to work on a variety of projects. I want to work on like one project style or two that we're really good at and just do that over and over with perfect fit clients. Like it's just so much lower stress than trying to do a full service type of approach. So that was part of it. And then as we started doing that and just embracing process as a whole, which has never been my starting strength, but like I'm an advocate for it now, just from feeling the pain of what it looks like to not have it. As we started building our processes and getting things better, one of the worst ones was putting all this time up front into building content briefs to prevent all the headaches that come at the end of content creation from rewrites and edits and just missing the mark. And so building better briefs is where our process started, and then automating it, because building a good brief takes forever, was part two. And that's kind of what led us down the software route. So it was, classic fixing our own problem. And when I finally bit the bullet and decided, I don't want to just script this up in Google Apps and stuff, I want to actually build it as a platform. I figured worst case scenario, we will just do this for ourselves and not have any software customers, and it'll pay for itself because we're saving that much time from it. And so I think we would get to that if we had decided not to launch it, but it turned out to be a good fit for other folks to be able to use too.
Yeah, very cool. And in full transparency, I've been using it and playing it with it for a while. It's absolutely fantastic. So I know Noah and myself have been playing around with Watson's NLU API, and I know that Content Harmony uses it as well. So I'd love to hear, what are your learnings behind it? What are your use cases? Any gotchas that you've run into with it as well?
So I'm kind of pragmatic when it comes to keyword extraction types of approaches and things, like looking at Google's natural language stuff, looking at Watson, looking at just doing raw n-gram analysis. There's plenty of discussions in the industry of like, n-grams are dated, you shouldn't use them, you have to do AI, ML-driven API stuff in order to get a good topic profile. And my initial feeling going into building the software was that's BS. Like I can just do n-gram extraction and look at 1, 2, 3, 4 grams, and I can build a perfectly good topic model off of that. And that's true. Mm-hmm. And that's how we started out, is we were going to build it with, here's your n-grams, here's your IBM keyword extraction, entity extraction, here's your Google keyword entity extraction. And like, we would just give our customers like a full menu to choose from. And then what we realized is, the way it works in your head, and then you pull all the data and you look at it once, is different than when you actually start building it into the user interface and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so the problems that we found with n-grams were basically the data's good, but training people that don't know how to like read the tea leaves of n-grams and like ignore the synonyms that show up and the duplicates, like training people how to ignore that stuff was the headache. Mm. So, you're doing best Buick dealer, and then best Buick would show up, and then all of those other variations. And to tell a strategist, just focus on the one that matters is really easy, because the three of us could look at that and be like, well, that's the keyword that matters. But to tell a writer that, or to tell a junior strategist that, is just too much of a hurdle. So we pulled Ngrams out and then focused really in on Watson. And the choice between Watson and Google was not that strong. We get similar enough results that I don't care all that much between the two. I've seen them combined, and like the results weren't. You get better value from adding more competitors to an extraction set and looking at overall terms than you do from adding more data sources and keyword extraction.
Huh. Interesting.
And the other problem, so Watson's great. We pay them. That's the primary entity and keyword extraction that we do. The things we notice, aside from that, adding more sites, and that's why you'll see tools using 30 or 40 competitors instead of just doing page one results. Page one results, you get a relatively small topic model. And part of the problem is we all give Google and Watson more credit than they deserve on how they handle deduplication and extraction and things like that. Mm-hmm. So if you look at I'm gonna cheat and look at my screen at a topic. So I've got a keyword brief pulled up for carbohydrate benefits.
You can share too. You can share your screen, Kane.
I'll jump in. So sometimes it's easier to explain the interface. Let me get that. Firefox here. All right. So this is a look at our topic profile, and you start looking down this. We throw 30 or 40 competitors through IBM, and then we still have to do this deduplication process that is the type of thing that most people going in would not expect to have to do from like a machine learning driven API type of solution. So carbohydrates and carbohydrate, those don't get compacted down into one concept. So a third of your competitors, it'll say they use the phrase carbohydrate, and the other third it'll say they said carbohydrates, and those are two separate concepts. Complex carbohydrates, that rightfully is a different keyword because that's a separate topic. But we have to manually do all the desynonymization, the dehyphenization, and the decapitalization. IBM will send back whole grains with a capital W and a capital G if somebody uses it in their brand name or something, but they'll send back whole grain in lowercase if somebody just uses it in body copy. So that's my biggest feedback for anybody trying to build stuff from scratch on anything is you're going to have to do more post-processing than you'd like, no matter what source you use. And so, certainly that's a little bit of the value that we're providing is going through and doing all of that. But that was probably the thing that surprised me most once we started doing thousands of polls at a time, was just how much of that post-processing we had to do. Huh. So that's been my biggest gut. The other thing is, I'll show you a breakout under our competitors tab for one. We don't give you direct access to most of the IBM data, but we do show it in a flyout here for some page one competitors. And so this, you can see the example, like blood sugar with a capital B, you got to do duplication and stuff like that. The relevance that comes back from IBM, I'm not going to say it's garbage, but it's pretty useless. And so for IBM or for Google, it's like salience, I think is their phrase. Salience is almost useless in my opinion. Like, I don't know how they're calculating it in a way they feel is reliable, but we generally just ignore it for IBM because 60%, 50%, almost everything comes back in that range at the top. I've never seen something that was like over 80 or 90% relevance, which doesn't make sense to me. Like this could be an article about blood sugar and it'd be like 60% relevance. And like that makes zero sense to me in what way they are assessing that. So I generally ignore a lot of that metadata when it comes to stuff like, what's the other endpoints that IBM gives you? They give you sentiment. I don't see any real practical use for sentiment when it comes to creating content and stuff. Now, if you're running like Yelp reviews or something through there at scale, then yeah, sure, there's some sentiment value. But from a content marketing standpoint, like the core of what we want is inside of the entities and inside of the keywords. So. Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at more than just the first page, i.e. the first 10 results. How are you dealing with that noise ratio of if you're looking at, say, too many, page 2, 3, 4, 5 results?
Yeah, we do. We pull a mobile SERP, we pull a raw desktop SERP with 0 modification, and then we also pull a 100 desktop result separately.
Uh-huh.
And part of that is most rank trackers will pull a 100 result pack. And those are garbage, in my opinion, for measuring search intent, because you could have an image pack down at slot 63, and that's not actually part of the real intent that 99% of users encounter. So we pull as, you know, true of a SERP as we can for mobile desktop when we're doing intent type of stuff. And then we go pull the 100 pack just to fill out the URL load. And so we started out throwing all mobile URLs, all desktop URLs from the first result and the desktop results from the second result. And we still do that. The biggest headache for us was just there's so much AMP stuff on page one nowadays that URL deduplication for AMP URLs just stinks, because there's no reliable pattern. There's AMP subdomain, there's AMP subfolder, there's AMP parameter, there's AMP hash bangs, I think we've seen. There's native AMP. And so the URL deduplication of pulling in mobile URLs stinks. So for the most part, we don't, we saw enough mobile overlap with desktop results and no added value to pulling in more mobile results to the topic profile. So we generally just don't pull in a lot of that. And so the thing with the topic model is you care a little bit more about what certain page one results use, but those are still so noisy. And especially if you get a 7-pack of normal results for page one, like trying to get an overlap, a topic model out of 7 results is like, you'll get 6 keywords that show up in more than 2 documents. So it's so small as to be almost useless for the purposes of content grading, and also just for the purposes of doing really anything other than putting in front of a writer and saying, you should use these 6 keywords. So that's fine, but we don't want to grade people's content off of that. So that's part of why we went and grabbed more second, third page results. I think examples where page 2 and 3 results throw the topic model off are mostly cherry picked. Like, I think for 95% of results, adding the extra results is good. Page 2 and 3 results are generally helpful. There's definitely exceptions, and there's definitely stuff where, like, you know, medical is not a bad example. Page 1, you're going to have a lot of, I don't want to say whitelisted, but like authoritative sites that are allowed into the results, you know, the Mayo Clinics of the world and stuff like that. And you'll get a lot of like medical affiliate or somebody like that on page 2 or 3. So there's a little bit of that going on, but to me, that's more of a domain-based thing than it is a topical-based thing. And even more so, Mayo Clinic's a perfect example of, like, it's hard to get a topic profile, topic model off of a 200-word piece of content. And they're a classic example of, like, high-authority, thin content.
Interesting. So are you using PAAs as well in this analysis?
Yeah, so we use PAAs as part of how we measure search intent. They're what we call a weak signal. So search intent can come when you're measuring search intent by SERP features and formats of content that Google wants to show. There's weak signals and there's strong signals. So a Google video carousel at the bottom of the page, that's a low strength video signal for me. If it's a video answer box for a music video, that's like 3 out of 3. That's as strong as search intent can go, because like you're never going to rank above a top of page video slot. Or at least you're going to have to encounter some other change for it to happen. So when we're looking at something like PAAs, something that automatically shows up on 60 to 80% of search results by default is a pretty low strength signal for me. So we flag it like it's a research driven signal. The fact that people might have other questions, but it's not something that it's more helpful from a productivity workflow standpoint as far as identifying questions you can include in content than it is from a search intent analysis perspective. So that's kind of how we look at it. Is we pull in into our questions data, we pull in PAAs as kind of our primary source. You know, if there's a PAA slot and there wasn't on this particular search result, then obviously we want to rank that. But we also go fetch other sources like Quora and Yahoo Answers and things like that to be able to augment it, because in most cases you can't get enough questions from just the PAA slots, or Google only shows certain types of questions, but you'll get more natural, you know, a lot of PAAs have been kind of machine learning edited and things. You'll get more natural human questions out of Quora and other sources.
Totally. So Noah, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I got a couple. Oh, okay. So big surprise. So let's say we're starting a new brief and I want to do carbohydrate benefits. Am I typing in that keyword and the tool's pulling in the top 2 or 3 pages of results, or am I putting in competitors?
No, so the way our workflow is built is backing out to an agency workflow. If you're doing pure content marketing style SEO for a client, you're going to come in and say, all right, we're going to do a gap analysis, find out what your competitors are ranking for.
Yep.
Or we're going to do other forms of keyword research that are not competitor driven, where we do more of a brainstorm session and keyword expansion and things like that. So this is either coming out of a brainstorm session or competitive research most of the time.
Okay.
We get down to what? We get down to content clusters, topic clusters, recommendations for individual keywords that we want to go after. And those are generally the primary keyword for a topic cluster. So we might say benefits of carbohydrates, carbohydrate benefits, benefits of carbs. We cluster those together through whatever topic clustering methods we use in Excel or scripts. And then we basically get to a point with the client where they say, yep, we want to rank for that. We agree that your assessment of like volume, difficulty, whatever is like, this is worth going after, or if that's what you recommend, let's do it. And then we say, all right, that primary keyword that we're going after for that page, that's what goes into Content Harmony. So that's kind of where we fit into the keyword research and like content production process.
Got it.
And we were a content marketing agency. Oftentimes we were working on either volume or intent driven, rankings, like we want to drive traffic from this term, or we were going to do link acquisition for a piece of content. So we were doing more top middle funnel stuff. But even if you're doing a low funnel, like landing page style piece of content, you still probably have a primary keyword set you want to rank that for. So the brief process works for that too.
Okay.
Primary keyword where you're starting.
Are you pulling in, thank you. Are you pulling in questions from Reddit?
Reddit and Stack Exchange Overflow is one that we're still adding.
Okay.
But fairly straightforward to add in, just, on the list.
Right. Okay, cool. And then I want to make sure that I'm correct. So I was hearing that you're looking at desktop and not mobile, right? Because your AMP is getting in the way on the mobile side. Did I understand that correctly?
That is true for our topic profile. So our actual topic overlap, it's not fully true for intent and some of the other stuff. We do call it mobile SERP because mobile intent's different.
Okay. Can you give us how let's jump into a couple different, if you're okay with it, can we jump into different types of intent and how you think about signals for those types of intents?
For sure.
Do you think there's value in that?
I could go on all day about it. I'll say, so everything I've written on search intent, like how we develop our process, we have a blog post on it. So I'll point people towards that if they want to go through the full thing, but I'm also going to cheat and reference that for some examples while we talk too.
Okay, baller. Okay.
So I'll let you jump in with questions before I start scrolling.
No, that's good. Like you had talked about video as being a weak signal. Like
right.
My process, and I feel like I'm not doing this intelligently enough, is I'll just look at the SERPs for a specific query, and and I'm working in the e-commerce space oftentimes, and I'm trying to build content around product launches, around key brands. So it's like brand guides, category guides, product launch content, and I'll look at what's in the SERPs to make sure that my content aligns with the content structure that's being returned, and I'll look at the featured snippet, the type of featured snippet that's returned, and the type of questions that are being returned in the PAAs. But is that kind of on point, or what am I missing?
I think it is. So, the best way to assess search intent historically is to look at the SERP, right? That's what all of us are going to do when we're training a junior strategist on our team, is like, you can't rank for something if you haven't looked at the search result, at least not like if you're really targeting it. Certainly, doing stuff at scale, you're not going to look at all of them. And that's where actually having a classification system starts to be handy. Like if you're doing 5 pieces of content in a quarter for a client, you just look at the 5 search results, right? But then you start to extrapolate that out and say like, all right, well, we're going to produce 5 pages of content that are very highly targeted, but we're probably going to rank for 10 to 50 phrases eventually for subterms and things. And we don't know what search intent split looks like among those subterms and things. So it's impossible to do any type of keyword research without like sliding right down into like, all right, now we have 1,000 keyword variations. So I don't know of a way to do it any other way. So when you start getting into that, that's when search intent classification starts to become more important than just looking at the primary search result. And so like the one that's showing up here on screen is a perfect example. I don't know if it's still this way, but Texas Electric has been historically a local and branded search result. It's not doing that right now, but TXU is a brand called Texas Electric, basically, historically. But if you search for Texas Electricity, that's somebody looking for sets of options. And so right now we're actually getting pretty vanilla 10 blue link type of results, but the ones we got a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago when this post was written, was very different sets. You know, we got like a branded knowledge panel and a local pack right at the top of the page. And if you were assuming that Texas Electric and Texas Electricity as part of the same topic cluster were going to be the same intent, you'd be a little bit off.
Yep.
And so, you know, all sorts of things stem out from that. Like, why aren't we ranking for this? Well, we actually can't rank for that. That's a brand name. So that's the type of stuff where, yes, looking at the search result is still part of the process, but you can't do it for everything. And then when you're earlier on in the process and you're doing thousands of keywords, there's just no reasonable way.
So have you heard how Dan Leipson talks about building understandings around topic areas?
I haven't. I saw parts of the video that he did with you guys, but I haven't heard him talk.
So that process that he talked about with us was they scrape the serps for like the head term.
Yeah.
They then visit all those pages, grab all those keywords. They then are grabbing all the PAAs and the featured snippets. And then they basically turn the crank again on that second level. And then they sometimes are turning the crank again on the third level. So they're grabbing like the top 10 results for the head term. They're grabbing all the keywords from those pages, doing the same thing that they ran the first time on all of those keywords, getting the first X results for all of those.
Oh, so you're getting the secondary rankings for those URLs.
Yeah, and they're getting like the entire tarball of the topic.
Right.
Like, my question is, what are we losing by going the difference between what they're doing and the first 3 pages? Like, are you?
I would say the problem they're solving is a topic clustering problem. Yeah. Because if you get to the end of that output, what are you going to have? Either you're going to have one mega topic model that covers hundreds of URLs, and that potentially might be good for content ideation, but may or may not be helpful for optimizing a single page.
Yeah.
To say. And then it also depends on how you're kind of separating out the different results from the different keywords. Like, it could be that there's an overlap of 5 URLs that are consistent among that set of 100 keywords, in which case I'd say like your clustering worked, like focus on those. You know, we would do topic clustering pretty similarly based on overlap of URLs ranking. Yep. But I think that's different than search intent. So for one, a bunch of ranking URLs is not going to be the same as search features.
Right.
It's not going to take into account a map, you know, a knowledge panel, whatever it is. And so looking at the site's rankings is a little bit different than looking at the type of things that Google wants to show users searching for that phrase.
Right.
You know, you start getting into little semantics and stuff, and like the keyword choice certainly matters as to whether or not there is any difference. Like, It could be that all of those are 10 blue links with a local pack. That's pretty normal. Mm-hmm. But it might be that some of, like, half of them are 10 blue links with a local pack and half of them are more, you know, research driven. There's PDFs and Wikipedia results and stuff like that. So to me, they're solving 2 different problems, but that's my gut reaction, having not seen the process.
The reason I'm asking you is that I know that for our audience, like everyone who's listening to this is into tools. They're into data, they're into Python, they're into Node, they're into automation. And I'm asking about this because I'm thinking through the process of building a tool to accomplish the task. And I need to know just how deep I need to go to still provide value.
Sorry to interrupt. Which task?
Understanding topics, understanding opportunities, and I'm not even sure what problems I need to solve yet. That sounds stupid, I'm sure, but
I think, and that's part of my follow-up is knowing what I want the output to be is the first step in ever being able to build a process that solves it, right?
Yeah.
So if I want to categorize serps, then I think reviewing the serp is is the step, and having an output that categorizes it is like what I want the output to be. That would be different than doing topic discovery for me. That would be different than doing topic expansion. That would be different than like universe building of like, all right, I know people search for Texas electricity, but what are they searching about? Air conditioning or like saving money on electric, like the, you know, expanding out the things I know is a different problem for me than like, all right, now I need to condense, cluster, and prioritize. And so when I talk to people about like the full keyword research process, like, you know, that's like from point A to point Z all the way at the end. At the beginning, you start out with seed concepts and you start trying to expand out and build and expand. But then the problem you get to, depending on how many layers deep you go, is how do you condense all that into actionable information or priorities. And so, you know, we can rely on things like cost per click, or we can rely on things like volume. Both of those are notoriously problematic. And so that's why everybody takes them with a massive grain of salt. To me, search intent fits in the same way as cost per click or search volume, but it's more multifaceted in what you can determine from being able to categorize things.
I got us off track as per usual.
No, it's all good. Like I said, I could go 3 hours on this. So like we're starting to get hypothetical, but when I think about how to use search intent, it would be, all right, I've already gone through a clustering process. I think these 10 or 20 keywords belong to this keyword based on the fact that the URL overlap is there. I'd say checkbox 1 is done. If the URL overlap exists, then yes, they are potentially part of a cluster. Depends on how much there's overlap, but like, you know, Point is proven that one page can rank for both, so they deserve to start in a cluster process. But if I then run all those keyword variations through and I see like, hey, there is some split in the intent types here where, you know, 10 of these are local and 10 of these are transactional. They're more shopping oriented. Like, you know, one we've been dealing with for a client recently, and this is not our actual client, but it's a similar enough issue, is if you look at DeWalt tools, you get a brand result. You know, there's definitely some shopping elements, but you're probably looking for a DeWalt site. And if you search for DeWalt brushless drills, in this case, I'm getting 2 branded results, but I'm definitely not getting the branded pack anymore. In a lot of cases, I'm actually getting Home Depot and Lowe's above the branded results. And so there's more of a purchase intent there. And so when you start getting in, you know, e-commerce, that's the perfect scenario of like, are people looking to buy or are they looking to research? And so the intent variations there start getting pretty curious. If you search for 2020 best brushless drills, in 2019, the video pack was way more prominent here. I'm actually getting it this time, but I just did another one earlier today. That was 2020 best cordless brushless drills. And the video pack had disappeared. The shopping pack had changed in format and size and things like that. And so those are like the little variations that I see on, is this a category page SERP or is this a product page type of SERP? Where do we want to map this keyword over to in an e-commerce sitemap? And intent can help by telling you types of pages that are ranking, types of features that are ranking. So that's kind of where I think search intent fits in the process, is it's separate from topic clustering. It's more like another checkpoint in, all right, even if we have clustered the topics, like what do we need to put forth into the search results to actually rank for it?
How do you think about the process? How does content fit into e-commerce for you? And how do you see content actually driving conversions? Like, that's the thing I struggle with the most, is we put just a massive amount of energy into the content that we build around brands. Yep. And I see lots of traffic, but I just am not seeing conversions. And I think of it, and I feel like that's okay, but I'd love for our efforts to drive impact more directly to conversions. How do you think through that challenge? Because that's hard. I mean, that's not easy.
It is.
Arguing for budget, right? So it's like you have to be able to make a case.
Yeah, it is a hard challenge. Sometimes it gets down to a, you know, keyword by keyword type of basis. So like it's easy to get lost down a rabbit hole of like, you know, it depends. But I'll give you an example. The same client that we've been working with, they are a manufacturer, so similar to DeWalt in this set of examples. And they've got a scenario where their retailers are outranking them for product and category pages. And so you know, if you're talking about like best brushless drills, it's not a branded search result. That's okay, right? Like the brand doesn't necessarily expect to rank. But if you're going into a branded version of that query and your DeWalt, like you want to keep your 1 and 2 rankings here. You're like your direct to commerce team that's trying to produce some branded sales. Like they have to respect the retailer's presence. They're not like truly competitors, but they're duking it out for the organic sales and sometimes the paid sales coming in from these keywords. And so when we start seeing a brand, in this case, this brand was like investing really heavy in these beautiful category pages, right? Like we would explain it, let's keep pretending it's DeWalt. They would explain like, here's how our drills are different. Here's the type of R&D we do that goes into these drills. And they start getting outranked by retail category pages that were like, here's 40 products.
That's my challenge. That's it in a nutshell. Like,
yes,
I'll build a 4,000 word article that's like the most expansive, complete view of the topic that our little team can build around a specific brand. All the technologies, history of the brand, all the FAQs. We'll have a video on the top with a 3,000 word extraction transcription of that video, so it's like keyword rich, etc. And I can be proud of what we do. The images are all lazy loaded. It's got geometry, color, specs, NPN.
Yeah, and then you go to page 2 because you don't have any category schema anymore or whatever. Yeah. And to me, that's where the intent takes over. And so one of my takeaways when I'm working on this with clients or teams is like, you can't brute force intent. Like 2012 content length plus link building, it works for informational queries. It works for research queries. If you want to rank for benefits of carbohydrates, go for it. You can brute force that. Like you can build 200 more links and you can win. You can't build 200 links to your beautiful brand page and outrank a retail product page if it's just the wrong intent. And so there's I'm going to sound real fancy and use like a word like corollary. There's like a side rule here, which is certain intent slots, they just get a slot. So you're no longer trying to rank number 1. You're trying to rank in the slot that's been provided for the intent type that you match. And so if you're looking at an e-commerce query, I got to look up the example that I use for this to remember what it is. You might find that slots have basically been set aside for certain types of results. So you might get, what is this one I'm using? Running knee brace.
You just blew my mind. And by the way, I am going to quote you on Twitter. That's the best. That's my, so far, that's the tweet of the show. You can't brute force.
My SEO thought leadership.
I freaking love that.
There's no goal other than being quotable, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
So look at this, sir. So runner's world, running with a knee brace, better braces. Which runner's knee brace is right for me? Shopping is inherently at the top as a shopping result, but Google right here is telling us like people don't know if they need a knee brace. And frankly, that having dealt with this, they probably need to see a physical therapist before they get a brace, right? But people also ask Amazon category page, local pack. If you're an e-commerce product page, like congratulations. First off, you don't have a slot for this keyword. This is category and research stuff. But if you're not the top category page, Amazon has that slot. There's an e-commerce category page slot right here, and Amazon gets it. There are 2 research-driven slots, one of which is kind of contrarian. So you could even attempt to suggest that is a research slot that gets 2 results or not. There's a local slot. I'm not driving, over to Walmart and Tequila to get a runner's knee brace, but like they are now doing local packs matched up to whether or not the product is actually in stock for mega retailers. I see this on Home Depot stuff all the time too. So that's a curious.
And that's just the product feed now, right? The product feed.
So. Yeah. I'm not good enough for local pack stuff to say for sure, but I think they say their website mentions in stock is probably product feed stuff. This is probably just scrape stuff. And then you get another guide. Now you get to the affiliate slot. All right. So if you're a running affiliate site, congratulations. Your best case scenario right now is slot 8. Now, can you build a couple dozen links and overpower the other ones? Maybe. It's possible, especially if you're kind of research driven enough that you're better than Runner's World or Better Braces here. And Better Braces probably is an affiliate site, I would guess. Never seen it before, so sorry if I'm outing anyone here. But yeah, Better Braces. It's a little bit better than your standard affiliate site, but I'm guessing they have a knee braces category page or something, and that's not what's ranking, right? Like their category page is not ranking. It's their guide on which brace is right for me. And so what I mean by like every intent gets a slot or a set of slots is that if you're the affiliate roundup, like your best case scenario is bottom of page 1 here. And so that's a little bit tricky to start getting into sub intent of those actual URLs ranking. Mm-hmm. But that's why intent matters so much nowadays. It's like we're not at 10 blue links anymore. We're at 7 ranking slots, and you get number 1 of one of them if you do it well.
Interesting. So when you're analyzing the intent of a page, are you programmatically identifying these types, like this category page, informational, affiliate, or is that more manual that you have to do?
So doing SERP features is obviously easiest. Here's a search pack. Here's a PAA pack. Here is a map pack, and refined by brand. You could categorize that a couple of ways because that format and markup is used for different types of refinements, but you can categorize all those pretty easy. When you actually get into categorizing sites and what the content is, you start getting into more complexity of declaring, is this an article? Is this research intent? Is this transactional? Certain things are schema driven. Like you can generally recognize a category page or a product page on a decent e-commerce CMS. E-commerce schema is a headache where people are wildly inconsistent with it, but you can usually recognize what those pages are. Articles, long form stuff, you can generally recognize what those are. But getting into contrarian things like preventing runner's knee versus best knee braces versus how to choose, all of those intent types, you start getting outside of site classification and search formats, and you start getting into more text analysis on the SERP. So we've got some features built in that are not built in yet that are upcoming that do a better job of doing this sub-classification of what URL types are ranking beyond just being able to scrape them. So we'll be able to tell you, like, is it how-to articles? Is it best roundups? Is it contrarian stuff? But that's not released yet.
So I feel like I am going to ask a dumb question. So let's look at this query. Where's the strong signal on this page for intent?
I would say shopping is a medium query in the fact that for us, what we would classify it as is transactional. So I'll reference our intent types here for a second, just to show them on screen.
Yep.
Where do we include it? Oh, we got a graphic somewhere. Yeah, I'll just show you the one that's over here. So we use 7 or 8 classification types. So research, fresh news, local, answer results, separated out from research results, video, visual, brand entity, and transactional. I can spend some more time on why we chose those and types of
I do.
But jumping into this, the fact that people are paying for their product ads to show up, like, first off, AdWords is part of search intent, right? Like, we don't need to just look at organic results. What people pay for to show up is almost as informative, and so that's why people rely on CPC, but being able to actually rely on what type of results are showing up is pretty helpful too. Long form articles, we would generally call research intent because that's really what they are. PAAs we flag as a low strength type of research signal because it doesn't tell us a lot other than that people do have questions about the topic. E-commerce category page, we would flag as transactional. A map box, we would flag as local. There's positioning stuff. If that map box is at the top of the page, then that's a much stronger local signal than when it's just buried. Because especially for a lot of e-commerce transactional stuff nowadays, there is no all local and there is no all e-commerce, right? The two just get blended together. And like runners, braces, and tools are the perfect example. Like if I want to buy a tool, I'm actually surprised to not, here's the map pack. I get a service center for this one. So that's probably why a regular map box isn't showing up. But so that gets us halfway down the page. And then these other ones, if there's nothing notable about them, if it's just a page of content, then we don't really flag it as anything. Like 10 blog posts isn't going to score really high on research. We generally look for exceptions from the norm of just, page of text content. And so usually that could be affiliate pages, could be e-commerce product category pages, could be other types of schema markup that suggest like forums that are kind of research driven. So we do scrape the pages to grab our search intent and classify page types and things, and that makes a factor as well. So I would not score anything on here as a 3. It's not so overwhelmingly a shopping page that that's probably transactional, or research would probably take over as primary intent for us, but we use an overlapping score system. And so we would say there's a bit of research intent here, there's a bit of transactional intent, and then there's a little bit of local, but it's low. It's just a map back.
This reminds me, so when you were getting down into the lower of first page results, it reminded me a lot of Izzy Smith's MozCon presentation, where she was talking about watching how a page performs in Search Console, and you'll see it change in where it's ranking. Mm-hmm. And then depending over time, it'll have this thing where it'll go up to position 2 or 3 and then drop back down. So it's almost like when you were talking about the contrarian ones, it's almost like Google's testing that result to see if that's actually matching intent. And then if it is, it's going to pop up higher up in the slots.
Yeah, they're testing the slot.
Yeah.
More, as much as they're testing you, they're testing that intent type.
Cool.
And when I talk about how Google does stuff, I don't know if I'm different from other SEOs, but I'm not necessarily talking in terms of like, I know the algorithm works this way. I'm thinking about, all right, how would I do it if I was trying to make the search results better? And so when I say they're testing the intent type, that's how I would do it. Like, does a shopping box fit here better? Or does like a product list fit here better? So I'm speaking in generalities, not like this is something I know Google's doing. So that's worthwhile caveat before I get being too definitive. So yeah, and so PAA is one of those things that feels almost hard coded. Like I don't often see it show up at like position 7. It's usually in that top 2 to 5. But the local pack is definitely a dynamic one where that can be all over the page. And like, the shopping best product, popular product boxes, that's one that shows up all over the page. So I feel like those are intent slots that get tested all the time. And then like this is the brand result. And these are the e-commerce results, right? And there's definitely like, hey, should we test one shopping result above the brand result and see how it does? That's the type of test that we've seen lately that are kind of a pain in the butt for the one client example I'm thinking of on the e-commerce side, where it's like, you're still going to, DeWalt tools, you would want that to be a pretty branded result, but maybe the DeWalt brand page on an e-commerce retailer is just a better fit for the users. And so you're going to see ranking 1, ranking 2, ranking 1, ranking 2, ranking 1, ranking 2. You just see it getting swapped back daily and getting tested. So I haven't thought about looking at it in Search Console so much as I've looked at it in, Rank Tracker for the client, but it's the same concept totally.
Jordan, I didn't mean to take over.
No, not at all. It's all very, very interesting questions that you had, Noah.
Yeah, I don't have answers for all of this. I have thoughts on more of it than I have answers. So I'm curious to get input from you guys.
Well, I mean, like my challenges are all so weird because it's a combination of e-commerce and local. They were almost all my initial clients were bike shops that they all gross between like $1 and whatever $15 million in revenue. So they're going from just being a store to understanding e-commerce.
Yep.
To starting to incorporate a warehouse into this scale, Yeah.
And how did COVID change the SERPs is a fascinating blog post I'd love for somebody to write.
Yeah.
But
that's like Lily Ray territory all day long.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see that. We can track some search intent over time, but you have to set it up to actually track. So I'd be curious to see that. Bike retailers are a perfect example of like, I might want to buy this locally, but I could just as well buy it from, e-commerce or affiliate too. So pretty similar to the tool examples.
Cool. Okay. So we talked about search intent. You were talking about topic discovery. Which of the two do you get more excited about personally? And do you want to take us into topic discovery too?
I could do keyword research variations and stuff all day long because I love it. It's one of the most fascinating like foundations of like SEO work to me. More than a lot of technical stuff is like thinking about what people type and how they get to your site. When it comes to topic expansion, I think I used to be more hypothetical, like what are cool ways we could do this? Like I gave a talk once at Dallas at their state of search that was like talking about doing text analysis on a bulk export of a customer's help desk software thread and doing like, ngram and keyword and entity extraction if they had, assuming they had thousands of threads. And then saying like, here's what your customers ask about most. So let's make sure we've got content addressing those topics and help threads and things like that. And I still think that's super cool. And I think it's probably more relevant. It feels relevant agency side as much as in-house side. But like as our agency work shifted, I got a little more pragmatic to like, I want to focus more on repeatable and trainable aspects. And so cool hypothetical things were like, stop it. Like quit dreaming up cool new processes and just make your current one repeatable and profitable. As an agency and also as like results for the client. So to me, it's always, we start with, there's either core topics and we need to drill down into what intent is highest for purchase and, map that type of stuff out for a client to build a content program that has a chance to convert, or it's very, volume driven and volume and intent driven, where we just want to get as many people in this audience market as possible so we can get them on the email list and retarget them. Or, it's very link driven and I don't even care about what the piece of content ever necessarily ranks for because I just want to earn links to it and build up domain authorities. So I guess I would say I became much more outcome driven on what we were trying to do with the program and trying never to focus on more than one or two core sets of metrics. And so that's where my keyword research has gone too. Like if the goal is to build brand visibility in market, then let's do our normal volume driven and content competitor driven gap analysis stuff and figure out like where's the quickest place we can drive results. And then we'll remove topics that are just off brand or less valuable for you, that there's still that human brand level prioritization. But I stopped looking for ways to expand that out because that works for all new brand. Like that works for almost all client types as you jump into new engagement, right? Is let's just figure out where the quick wins are. And so I don't want to say like short-term results became the focus, but like, how do we quickly show value, especially as a content marketing team where, doing new content, building links is inherently a 6, 12, 18 month value timeline in many cases. So topic expansion, that was a little tangent, but
yeah, no, it's good. How do you think about, you have a topic, you have a head term, you understand subtopics. How do you think through the process of, big long page versus content hub? Is it just looking at the serps and looking at what's ranking, or how do you, and
yeah.
I'm listening. I know
Yeah.
I am listening as you're talking in case it sounds like I'm being dumb.
No, content hubs are fun. I wrote a blog post last year about it that I'm very proud of because for me, the topic of content hubs is like, what kind of hub are we talking about? Are we talking about one massive page that directs people in a spider web of directions to existing blog posts? Or are we talking about a classic hub and spoke with 10 subpages and like, this is our guide to tiny houses. Here's our 10 pages about tiny houses and costs and DIY and that classic hub and spoke model? Or is it starting to get into more like exotic content hubs where it's like, the other ones I reference are called like a content matrix, where we have a series of topics and a consistent set of sub pages underneath them. So classic example would be like drug symptoms on WebMD or something like, not drug symptoms, but like medical symptoms. You have a fever, you have, headache, you have backache, and then backache symptoms, causes, things like that. There's a consistent set of sub pages underneath it. To me, that is a style of content hub. It's something that can be structured out and thought about in a structured way and page templated out. And so when I'm thinking about content hubs and how to choose them, sometimes the keywords and the style of keywords themselves are determining that format. Sometimes it's just like the different styles of opportunities, but that's what I'm trying to do. Top of the process is match up like what that keyword universe looks like for the hub against what the right page format is to rank for the most of them that we can. And so is volume part of it? Yes, but it's also, there's like variation aspects in there. And like probably whether or not you're going off one head term or if this is like a repeatable pattern across a bunch of similar terms. So to me, there's a little bit of a topic clustering problem there, but it's also the site architecture part is hand in hand with it. Working in an agency setting, I get to talk, do sales and get to talk to client prospects about stuff, but you're in the middle of the pitch in a way, and you're talking to them about like, here's how we do things. Now that we've moved over into being a software company, I'm doing lots of software demos. My favorite part about it is I get to like do multiple 1 hour one-to-ones, and it's like a demo, but I get to talk to people about how they're doing their content marketing all day long. And that is like the funnest job description I can think of other than building the product itself, because we get to do this the whole time. Like it's not recorded and dropped on YouTube, but had a chance to do this like 100 times since we launched the product every time we do a demo. So it's a dream for me. So I like this stuff.
How are you finding those interviews impacting the product feature set?
You start looking at like how to structure sales demos and stuff. And it's, this is probably relevant for agency sales demos too, but a lot of people will try and do like those 10, 20-minute hop on the phone qualifier calls before they do a proper demo. I've approached it as like most of the people that really want to use our tool and our workflow, they know what a brief is, they know how to do it. They might do it differently than we do. And so I treat them as a little bit of product training. And so you'll talk to like SaaS experts and sales experts, and they'll say, don't do it that way. You shouldn't do it. But to me, like training people, here's how I think about the workflow. Here's how we've solved these various problems. Here's how we're different than the other options on the market. SEOs are a tactically and like tool-driven market. Like they geek out on that. And for them to know that like I care about the same stuff is just as important as me sitting there like qualifying their business and how many briefs they do a month and stuff like that. So I don't know if that answered the question or not, but.
Well, have you changed your feature set based on those discovery calls? Have they enlightened you about how to do content marketing in ways that you hadn't thought of? I mean, you've clearly thought about this at like a massively deep level. Like, are you finding that, is it reinforcing how you're thinking about doing content marketing, or is it making you think that you are off track in specific actionable ways?
So thanks for getting me back on track there. Yes. So part of the training part of the demo is I get to show you how I think about it, but then I get to hear how people think differently about it, or they'll ask questions where it's clear that like either they think about topic models different, or they think about search intent differently or something. And so it could mean they don't like the tool, but it could also mean like, I wish it did this. So I had a call yesterday with somebody that was very much focused on like, all right, my clients are super mobile driven, 90% of traffic. Walk me through how I can use this more for mobile. And so we talked about where the gaps in the product were, but also where the opportunities were that already were in the product. But yes, like the demo call, even if somebody never even logs in or signs up for the trial, still turns into product development in that sense, because I get to hear how those people are doing it. So I'll say that. The other thing is when you go to sit down, like when you script out a process for your agency, you build it exactly the way you want it, and it's yours to maintain, and it works for you. But then you'll find that like, a new client type will come in and they need a little variation. So you have to like, code for that edge case. Now, approaching this as a product forced us to think about how to do this for everybody and make it good for everybody. And so you instantly start making product sacrifices. Like our focus has been building a content brief from the start. And so like over the last 2 years, the market has just filled up with content grading tools. We haven't launched a content grader yet. It'll be out in a month or two probably. But that's been the primary feature focus for the majority of what we're getting compared against as far as competitors. So it's fascinating to me that there's a lot of different approaches and tools that can coexist that solve similar problems that aren't the same. But it forces you to just think about what's the problem I want to solve, and like what are the exceptions I don't want to solve for. So I'll give you an example that I had chatted through with Jordan. Jordan was working on some local projects and said basically like carbohydrate benefits is great, but I'm working with like a local nutritionist in Las Vegas, and I don't really care about US results. I care about, carb benefits in Las Vegas or something like that. It was a more relevant example than that is, car dealership, bike shop, whatever it might have been. And so for us,
Mississauga, Ontario.
Not sure. I can't remember the actual scenario, but then the question is, do we let people choose reports at a local level? If the majority of our customers are doing content marketing and like regional stuff is not relevant, should we force everybody to choose a location every time they run a report? Or should we let people opt in to local level results because they're doing more localized content and things like that? Those are fun product decisions. They're also major like headaches because you instantly have a backlog of 80 features you want to work on. And I had to tell Jordan, I want to do that, but for now you should just type in Seattle carbohydrate benefits or whatever it is, Las Vegas. So there's ways to get around it, but that's how I would say making it more relevant for maybe folks that are like scripting their own solutions that are thinking about turning it into a more open access tool or something. That's the biggest thing is like 100 people will try and use your tool 80 different ways, and you only intended it to be used 5 ways. So you instantly start deciding what's a good idea, what's a bad idea, and then you start getting into fun product theory around like, I know you said you want this, but this is what you really need, horse versus buggy kind of thing, or horse versus Model T. So that's the line of thinking I go down when you start talking about how demos have kind of informed the product.
When I look at your tool, it appears to me that you're using a ton of APIs to pull in data.
Yeah.
Or you think, I didn't do the research up front, are you thinking of providing an API with the tool?
We'll have an API at some point. So a couple of things to note. Our main product is around being able to build briefs for landing page content, content marketing content, whatever. Building a long form brief that a strategist can hand off to a client or whatever.
Right.
To me, search intent is step one of analyzing how to rank for a piece of content. And, I literally train strategists like this is the order to look at stuff. Like I want you to consider the intent, consider the topic, consider like the outline of how you want to build it, questions you should answer, sources you should use, competitors that you should reference and not reference, whatever. Like there's a linear workflow to the way we've built our tool. Yep. And so search intent itself is a standalone valuable feature that frankly is valuable in both. Like if somebody wants to run 10 search intent reports, go for it. It's fine. It's nice for a content hub to see like how intent varies. But the intent becomes more valuable the higher you scale it because you get, you can't look at every SERP, right? You can look at 10 SERPs. You can kind of look at 100 SERPs. You don't want to look at 1,000 SERPs or 100,000. So that will be a tool set available via API at some point. It's like next year feature set stuff for us. And then we're also going to have, more of your typical like Zapier and maybe API stuff for the briefs themselves. Like, all right, I've loaded up 12 primary keywords into this particular Airtable view. Every time a new row is entered into that Airtable view, go ahead and fire off the Zap trigger to go ahead and queue up a new Content Harmony report. And then, of course, all the dangers that come with automatically firing off reports when that's the main billing. all of that stuff shows up. So we got to have the little warning that's like, FYI, you got 12 credits, so don't Zapier too many of them. But we'll try and set up those workflows. One of the things that we're not trying to do is be people's project management system, right? So if you have a content marketing pipeline that needs to exist in like Notion, Basecamp, Airtable, Google Sheets, whatever, we don't want to replace that. Like that's not what we're here to do. We want to be the best place to like assemble the brief and then ship it out and get it out of the tool to be used. But we don't want to be somebody's content pipeline.
Did you show us the topic tab yet? I don't remember.
The primary set of data that's in there is our term overlap.
Right. Okay.
And it's probably worth like mentioning here on the camera. The main way we make this actionable for a brief is we just let people highlight the stuff. Like we might come back with 50, 150, 200 terms that should show up in your document based upon competitor usage. But primarily we want you to know, all right, you should probably talk about carbohydrates, how they affect blood sugar, fiber and whole grains are going to be sub things, and how fruits are a little bit different, and complex carbohydrates, and how it fits into a low carb diet, and how fiber, we already did fiber. Like, I want the writer to consider those 5 to 10 keywords in their brain while they're writing. I do not want a writer to have 100 keywords in their brain, because the writer will say, like, A, screw these guys, I don't want to write for them anymore. And B, whatever. I'm not like, I'll write the piece I want to write, and then I'll come back and like jam keywords in. And so to me, at the brief stage, the goal is to tell a writer, I want you to really focus on like these 5 to 10 concepts need to show up multiple times in the piece. And that's enough for a writer to then, take that into account. So if you jump into our content brief, then anything that you've highlighted, I've got some other gibberish I've put in here, but anything you've highlighted now shows up here. But we don't give you 150 topics to think about as a writer. We give you the ones that the strategist has highlighted. So that's the biggest way that we're different from the content grading options on the market, is we're very focused on getting strategist edited brief commentary and instructions over to a client or writer, and not just auto generating a report with data. And so our process works better for agencies, because that's the number one case where we've got clients involved, we've got multiple strategists on the agency team, and we've got freelance or in-house writers. So there's so many parties involved that like that point of truth document before we start producing content is pretty critical for everybody to understand what we're trying to do, who the content's for, what it needs to include. If you're in-house and there's like an editor and like an SEO team, you may or may not need the briefs as much, right? You might be able to just train your one writer, just hop into this content grader. You know what our page templates look like or whatever. And so that's part of where different tools fit into different processes across the market. But anyways.
Did you show us the outline tab yet?
I did not, I don't think so. So our outlines tab, we primarily focus on, so if you're going to go through and build a brief, you're going to spend 30, 45, 60, hour and a half, 90 minutes doing a bunch of research on a SERP, and then you're going to put all those notes, cut and paste them into a Google Doc, right? That's the standard agency approach to building briefs. What we do is take the 20 or 30 browser tabs you would have opened, and we get them into a set of tool tabs so that you can tell a junior strategist, look, you don't have to remember a 60-point checklist for process for your SOPs now. You just have to run the report and check every tab, and here's what you do on every tab. And Kane's got some learn videos here that tell you what to do with the data. And then there's maybe 2 or 3 things you should look for that you should go find in another tool set. So that's part of the time savings, is we just put everything, it's like bumpers in bowling, like we keep you from going off track. And then the second thing we do is try and help you brainstorm that topic outline really quickly, because that tends to be the other, like, number 2 time suck, is coming up with that H2, H3 type of document structure. And so for us, the outline tab is that, like, let's just quickly show you what your competitors' document structures are, and then you can quickly hone in on which competitors do a better job and highlight those.
That is a massive time savings.
That's our hope. We've gotten the research. So we, as an agency, we got this process down to maybe 60 or 90 minutes, depending on how well the strategist knew the topic. And that's trained strategists. We've had junior strategists where we just told them to go build a brief, and it took them 4 hours, and it ended in tears because the editor didn't like it, and like been there. But a trained strategist, 60 or 90 minutes. The research part used to take an hour. That's 5 or 10 minutes of analyzing tabs. The brief, building out the brief notes is still the more time intensive part, but we've got some other features that save time on that. Like you can build templates for your entire team or for specific projects, so that like for one client, you always have the same audience and persona data in the brief and things like that.
Can you show us an output?
Yeah, I'll do
your Hello World output.
Yeah. So I'll jump back. Pardon me, I'm going to jump through dashboard here. We've got one that I like to use for a hosting website example. So say you're going to do a blog post on responsive web design examples. I use this in a few videos on our site, and then I actually have like a 30-minute webinar on how to build this brief. But this is the one I use as like, here's what a finished brief might look like. And so there you'll have your H2, H3 type of structure typically, for example. And we've got a whole bunch of other subsections depending on data types that we use. You can do 2 things. You can either share the brief URL, we have a read-only shareable URL, or you can copy it to your clipboard, and then whether you're using Office 365, Google Docs, whatever it is, try and take my browser off tab and do my password stuff here. whatever you're using, Notion, Basecamp, you can just paste the brief in, and we just format the entire thing as a deliverable for you. La-di-da-di-da, let me get logged in. Cool. And so you come in, you paste that. It's like a 20 or 30 kilobyte thing coming off your clipboard, so it takes a second, but it all sucks right into the Google outline. And so you've got a nice, 4 to 8 page brief. And then if you have good, you guys are, a lot of the presentations have been big on like Google Sheets and Docs automation and stuff. If you've got a good agency brief template or document template already set up and you paste into it the right way, you can have it inherit your fonts and colors and things like that too.
Did you think of having the user do OAuth 2 and give you scope permissions for Drive and Docs and just have it be a feature versus like copy paste?
I thought a lot about it. So this goes back to the product roadmap.
I've done that. I mean, I've built that.
Yeah. No, I didn't want to deal with OAuth right now. We'll have a native.
No OAuth.
Well, no, it's not even like no OAuth. It's like, what's the fastest way for me to let every one of my customers get this data out of my app and into a nice format?
Yeah.
It's not to build a Google connection and then build a Microsoft connector and then build a Zapier connector and a Notion connector. It's to just give them what they want and let them paste it wherever they want it. And so that starts getting into what people are asking for. Our number one thing is, I want this in a Google Doc, or I want this in a Word doc, or I just want to get this out of your app because I don't like blue. My brand is red and I can't show it to a client, or whatever it was, right? So the fastest way to solve it was, well, let's just give it to you on your clipboard and make it look nice, and you can edit it however you want in whatever app you want. So did I think about a lot of things? Yes. And then I thought how hard it was going to be for me to do the development on it versus my other developer. And I said, let's just do the copy to clipboard. So what was the best 80% solution to getting everybody the value? It was this.
Kane, one question that we love to ask people that I think is hyper valuable is getting inside your brain and learning how you solve problems. Do you have a framework for how you solve difficult, thorny problems?
Simmer on it and not talk to anybody about it for weeks and then come out of my cave with a solution is probably my comfortable version, right? Like my first boss out of college, this was positive and negative feedback, said you're a little bit cerebral. So I've got a problem with like noodling around on stuff and drawing things out, illustrating it, talking in metaphors, maybe talking about it with 1 or 2 people out loud when it really gets bad, and then drafting a solution. There's good and bad parts to that. So I doodle a lot, like my the Content Hub stuff we were talking about. Content Hubs. That entire blog post was centered around these drawings that I did to basically say, like, all right, when I think about Content Hubs, here's how I think about it. And so it had different types of hubs. And so I a couple of years ago, I switched to iPad with a pencil, and there's an app on there called, I can't even find the name of it, but it's Notability. And so I will write, all of my notes on there instead of like grid sheets that I used to use, because I would end every year with a stack of paper like that, and right. Those things didn't go anywhere. So I constantly will have that open, and I doodle all day long. Half the time I'm not actually taking notes, I'm just drawing. But a lot of times when I actually sit down to chart something out like this, I sketch on it, write about it, think about it, open up docs.new and type some things until it like takes a form in my mind, and then start improving on it from there. So that's not quite the perfect answer. I will give you one more like actionable, practical tip that I think is handy that I teach in content workshops. And it's not like the world's most interesting solution, but like you can solve almost any problem with it, is just brainstorming grids. And so like if you're trying to brainstorm content topics like mountain bikes, road bikes, and then say you do a top of funnel I'll use my annoying things. Start thinking about like those types of things, or like change up the axis with what does a beginner care about with mountain bikes versus advanced. Like doing that type of segmentation of information is, to me, the fastest way to do some of that like topic expansion and like brainstorm ideas and stuff like that. And so if we're getting into brainstorming problems, I like to do this as a way of structuring out like this is the end result I'm trying to get to, is like, what are these little overlaps? So I might as well put it into a grid and think about it like that. So that's one like mental model thing that I use across a lot of different problems, is like, you know, with our product, like, all right, here's the different features on the product. Here's the different user types. What is each user type having a problem with each feature set? And like, which ones are high priority, which ones are low priority? That's another place where I'll use like a table sheet like that.
Do you have a sense of how many different mental models you have in your tool belt? Are there like, can you name them? How many can you name?
I am not one of those folks that sits on Twitter and follows all of the stoic accounts and thinks about mental models all day long.
Right.
I admire them for their ability to. I have the book on mental models laying around here unread.
Yeah, I'm reading it now.
Yeah. I enjoy geeking out on that stuff, but I don't really follow through on actually like reading the book. I just kind of like dive into some blog posts and stuff like that. So yeah. Do I have a concept of how many mental models? No, because I think you just go through life collecting those mental models, and like you forget some, and like it's just like the tools in my shed, right? Like some are more handy during one project versus another, and you go back out and look. So I think of them more like a collection of, you know, things I use frequently and things that collect dust, and I don't remember what's in there. So number of them categorized like that would be impressive if I had it, but I don't think I do.
Cool.
Yeah, there's this thing I used to study called permaculture, which is kind of a hippy-dippy gardening set of concepts. And one of the thing, they teach a set of principles that are effectively mental models for farm and sustainability types of people, but a lot of it is about mimicking nature in various ways. One of them I really like is stacking functions. And so the copy brief to clipboard feature is the perfect example of that. Like, I have 4 problems. I could solve each one of them individually, or I could do one thing faster that solves 4 of them good enough. And so I'm stacking functions. 5 birds with 1 stone is another way to say it. So, and then, you know, you can go on with different ways. Like, people come up with architectural examples of, you know, this is an architectural feature that looks nice, but it solves these 3 structural issues. That's another good example. So I like the stuff I've studied with permaculture for thinking through things like that, because it comes up with more effective ways to solve problems. So that's another one that I reference a lot, even though, you know, I haven't really studied it in 10 years.
So I know you've got tons of interests outside of like digital marketing. I spent some time on your LinkedIn page. Dangerous. And I saw that you're into gardening. Do you want to get on your soapbox and tell us a little bit about your side hustle?
So I run a site called Insteading, and it's like a home and garden type of blog. Please don't mind our cumulative layout shift issues if we're working on it. But you know, the site's got a whole bunch of things: gardening, raising animals, natural building type of stuff. I personally have done a whole bunch of projects like that. You know, took 4 months off last year to remodel our house, and we've done just really extensive landscaping projects and things like that. So I'm into all that stuff. And I know there's like entire Slack groups of SEOs who are into gardening for folks that want to go deeper in that direction. So I geek out on all that. I'm, you know, one of those folks that has too many interests for my own time and good. I've also got 2 toddlers, so I no longer have many interests. I have lots of interests and no hobbies. So yeah, that's where I'm at currently. But the site, I still write some stuff occasionally. We've got a set of writers. We're going to launch some paid courses on here. So I'm one of those people that has a problem with turning every hobby into a business, or trying to. So this is that.
I love it. It reminds me of several websites that I love. Cool. This has been another amazing episode of Agency Automators. I feel so blessed to spend time with both of you. Until we meet again, folks, keep real, keep automating, keep playing, keep tinkering. And we're so stoked you spent some time with us, Kane. Have an awesome day, everybody. Peace out.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Take care.